Welcome everyone. Hopefully you've been enjoying these videos. I will continue to do them because I've found some really great benefits for my own learning. Today we've got a breathwork session, short breathwork, maybe 5 to 7 minutes. And then once we've entered that state of calm, collected receptivity, we will move into a short presentation on what I've learned about neurons and how learning takes place inside the brain at a functional level. I am not an expert, and I will not claim to be, but I'm just somebody who's very interested in learning and want to share that with you. So if you have any questions, please let me know. We will be starting the breath work very shortly after we've come to a nice, comfortable seat or stance. You can sit, or you can lie down, or you can stand up as I'm doing. Once you've found that comfortable seat, just start to pay attention to the breath coming in and out of the nostrils. Just really feeling the breath coming in. Nothing special we need to do. You can even completely ignore what I'm telling you to do and just rest peacefully in the present moment. I'm offering these techniques because oftentimes we need to get the mind on board with its own dissolution. So just coming to a comfortable seat and bringing in that air through the nose, exhaling through the mouth. Inhaling through the nose. Exhaling through the mouth. Inhaling through the nose, exhaling through the mouth, making exhale longer than the inhale. On your next inhale, visualize just really nutritious oxygen coming into your lungs and then diffusing through the blood out through the rest of your body. So inhaling, feeling that great oxygen come in. Then exhaling, allow the waste to disappear from your body, relaxing your whole body on the exhale. Inhaling that sweet oxygen into your nostrils. Exhaling all the waste out. And then totally dropping any sort of practice. Just noticing what was the effect of temporarily changing our focus to what's happening now, as opposed to focusing on what's happening in the past, what has happened in the past, or what will happen in the future. Both of which don't exist. They exist in our imagination, but they don't exist right now in this moment. So just noticing what happens when we redirect our attention, our awareness to this moment, not as some sort of method, but more as a sort of devotion towards reality. What is real right now in this moment? What is real? Now we've established ourselves in what's currently happening, what's real. We'll now move to another breath practice. This time we'll slow down the process of breathing. Breathing in and out through the nose. That if it's so slow that if you had a mirror in front of your nostrils, you wouldn't fog up the mirror. So just start to breathe really, really slowly and gently, not even using any muscles to help you breathe. Forget the idea of a deep breath. How slow can you breathe while also remaining comfortable? How slow and gentle can you make the breath? And then dropping that practice and returning to a normal breath and noticing how the breath has changed. And now, before we move into the presentation part of this video, we'll just take a moment to ask ourselves the question, what is really happening right now, if not what we think is happening? We've got our thoughts, we've got our emotions, we even have our senses that are changing, that are projecting onto the world and calling that reality, but that's not reality. That's our perception of reality. So just noticing what is really happening, if not what I think is happening. What's real in this moment? And then taking a moment to shake your body out, feel that wonderful joy, that dopamine rushing through your brain and the rest of your body as you start to move. Dopamine is really important for movement, regulating movement, and just start to shake the body out and prepare to hopefully learn something. So today I want to talk about neurons and the brain and the different connections that neurons can have. So just for a moment, take yourself back to when you were a child, or if you've recently experienced hanging out with any 2-year-olds or younger than 2-year-olds, and just notice the absolute receptivity in their experience. Their whole life is a psychedelic trip. Total plasticity. If you don't know what plasticity is, neuroplasticity, it's essentially how quickly neurons are. So you got the neuron, you've got the neuron body, and then you've got the, let me just share my screen real quick here. Oh, no, I can't share the screen. Okay, no, there we go. So you've got a neuron body. I'm just going to share my screen real quick. So this is a neuron body right here. And then you've got the axons and they connect to another neuron. And that's what's called a synapse. So when you have one neuron connecting to another or many neurons connecting all together. And so when you're in that baby neuroplasticity state, basically these neurons are just spreading out and connecting with new neurons and establishing connections about the world, and you're essentially bootstrapping your own intelligence. That's what a baby does, is through play, through touching, through tasting, through all these different things, through finding out their mother and stuff like that. They're basically playing with the world so that they can understand the world. And new neurons are connecting, and we start to develop a sense of what's happening in the world, a picture that's still with you today. But when we think about that picture, every time we look at a tree, we don't just see the tree that we're looking at right now. We see all trees that we've ever been taught about, because it's a symbol, it's a categorization, it's an example of a category. So our brain makes these connections about the world and then our place in the world And so there's a couple different types of connections that neurons can make. There can be strong connections. So, for example, if you speak English and the word sex, it's guaranteed that that word has a strong connection between all these different images of what sex is, probably from the first time you've ever heard about sex to all these different things. That's a strong connection. And now I'm going to give you a word that you probably have never heard of, and I'll make sure that you haven't heard of this because you probably don't speak Thai. Kun mai dai put pasa Thai. So those were just like a random set of words that I just threw at you because you've never had any experience. That would be a silent connection. There's no connection that you have with those words to have any sort of meaningful. All it was just my vocal cords making a bunch of random sounds. So there's silent, there's a strong, and then there's a weak connection. And a weak connection, I'll try to give an example of that, would be maybe you once had the fruit durian, but you haven't had that fruit named durian that comes from Southeast Asia in a long time. So your memory of it is kind of hazy. You don't really remember it. But if I were to give you durian right now, you'd be like, oh, yeah, I know that. I know that taste. That's really familiar. So there's silent, weak, and strong connections for neurons. So how many neurons are, and this is all just like a grave oversimplification delivered from a non-expert who you shouldn't pay attention to at all, and you should verify everything that I'm saying rather than trust me or trust anyone really. So lost my train of thought. So other interesting things about neurons, there's a couple different types of neurons as well. You've got the motor neurons and you've got sensory neurons. Motor neurons are what are allowing me to move my fingers right now. Motor neurons allow us to manipulate the world. And then you've got sensory neurons, which are the ones that we are sensing as we are walking around in the world. And what I just gave to you was, again, a brave overgeneralization, and that it's not quite as clear cut as that, because as I'm moving around the world, I'm both sensing and I'm moving, motor sense. So it's not like a clear, oh, this is sensory and the sensory shall not touch the motor. They're actually very, all the time, they're working in both ways. And the vast majority of neurons are sensory neurons. So we're sensing all the time. That's why if you go to that baby, the baby's doing this automatic processes of digestion that it's not really aware of and not really conscious of and not really controlling. But most of what we would call this conscious perceptive agent, that's just receiving sensory stimulation and kind of like figuring out how to move. If you ever seen a baby move, they're kind of got these patterns that they do of like, oh, I'm trying to, get up and I can't really get up. And, it's like just constant stress and suffering. And that's how they bootstrap their intelligence. And you are a product of that bootstrapped intelligence. So another interesting tip I'd like to share about this is that this associational process where we learn things around from the world as we're moving about is so interesting because oftentimes we make the wrong assumption or wrong association. We think maybe sex and good or bad. So sex bad or sex good. But those, like, reality is what's called combinatorially explosive. So we can't really come to a full understanding of what good or bad means. They're just labels that help us to kind of work in a practical sense with each other. And, if I would say sex is good, you kind of have an understanding of that. But if we really go into that, it's like, okay, yes, sex is good in this circumstance and not in that circumstance, but we're like, no one really knows. And it's not even like what I just mentioned is an abstract theorization of the world. It's not what's really happening right now. And so you can see this with kids. If you've ever interacted with kids, they'll come to an association early on, which they won't tell anybody about, and so they can't get feedback. Because another way that we learn and get the neurons to connect well with each other is we put our expression of what we think out to the world. But most people don't do that because there's a grave lack of courage at the moment in this world. And so we all need to find more courage to basically put out what we understand and then get feedback and understand when it's wrong. But oftentimes other people are also wrong, and you can't come to the truth through consensus, except if you're using Bitcoin. So in some situations you can get truth from other people, but oftentimes they don't know what they're talking about either. And so the finding of truth is a relatively challenging process. So I hope you enjoyed this breath work and short presentation. I've just been learning a bunch of propositional knowledge, and most of it's shit posting, because we're all shit posting all the time. The mind itself is a shit poster. It's constantly shit posting. And thoughts themselves aren't really that valuable. So hopefully you've enjoyed this. If you did enjoy it, I'm accepting donations for the breath work. My PayPal email is at Stuart Alsop III at Gmail. Stuart Alsop III at Gmail for PayPal. And if you found benefit for the breath work and from this propositional knowledge that I've been throwing at you, I would very much appreciate a donation, $5, something like that. So hope you enjoyed it. Have a great day. Thank you.